A primal scream built in her chest, a raw, animalistic cry of pain and rejection, but she swallowed it, refusing to give them the satisfaction of her complete unraveling. She would not break here, not now. But the foundations of her world had crumbled, leaving her exposed, raw, and utterly alone, a hollow shell where a vibrant mate once stood. Without another word, without a backward glance, Maeve turned, the crumpled scroll still clutched in her hand, a useless relic. She walked past Hannah, ignoring the outstretched hand, ignoring the choked apology, the sound of her friend's tears. She walked past Silas, not meeting his gaze, fearing what she would see there. Pity? Relief? The stark, cold indifference that would truly shatter her beyond repair. The door closed behind her with a soft click that resonated like the final nail in a coffin. The corridor was cold, shadowed, no longer a path to a shared future, but a desolate road to nowhere. The air, once thick with betrayal, now felt impossibly thin, stealing her breath. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay, couldn't breathe the same air, couldn't bear the crushing weight of their truth. The bond, once vibrant and pulsing with life, now felt like a phantom ache, a searing emptiness where warmth and belonging once resided. She had to escape, to run, to find some place where the echoes of their honesty wouldn't haunt her every step, where the ghost of their broken trust wouldn't choke her. She needed to disappear before the raw wound festered and consumed her entirely, before the pack could witness her slow, agonizing demise. Her wolf whimpered, a lost, sorrowful sound deep within her, desperate to flee, to shed the skin of this unbearable pain. The click of the door latch echoed, not just in the silent corridor, but in the deepest caverns of Maeve's soul. It was the sound of a final door slamming shut, sealing off her past, her future, her very identity as Alpha King Silas Moore's mate. But Jonas was engaged in conversation with the alpha of a neighboring allied pack, his back partially turned, his focus elsewhere. And even if he had seen, would he have intervened? The cold, hard truth was that he had made his statement clear earlier. He had chosen to lean elsewhere. Her gaze darted to Samira, who sat a few tables away, her head bowed in a show of demureness, but Elin caught the subtle lift of her chin, the faint curve of her lips, a silent acknowledgement of Rorik's maneuver. "My counsel is always available, Rorik," Elin replied, her voice low, steady, a carefully constructed facade of authority, "as is my judgment on those who overstep their bounds." It was a dangerous bluff, a gamble on the lingering fear her title still commanded. Her wolf bristled, urging her to shift, to bare her teeth, to remind this upstart male of the power she once wielded. But she couldn't, not here, not now. To unleash her wolf would be to confirm her instability, to give Jonas the final justification he needed to formally cast her aside. Rorik chuckled, a rough, derisive sound that scraped against her nerves. "Aluna's judgment is only as strong as her alpha's backing, is it not?" He took another step, closing the distance, his scent overpowering, a challenge to her very being. "And it seems the king has found new ears to whisper into." A gasp rippled through the nearby tables. Rorik had dared to voice the unspoken truth, the public humiliation. This was no longer just a challenge, it was an open disrespect, an attack on the Alpha King's chosen mate, even if she was a discarded one. For a moment, Elin believed Jonas would surely react now. This was an affront to his authority, his choice, however flawed. But the Alpha King remained oblivious, or chose to appear so, his rich laughter carrying across the hall as he clapped the allied Alpha on the shoulder. The silence that followed Rorik's words was thick with dread. Elin felt a cold sweat prickle her skin. Her wolf was screaming now, a desperate, trapped sound. The betrayal was complete. Not only had Jonas forsaken her heart, he had forsaken her safety, her honor, her very standing within the pack. He was allowing this, permitting her public dismantling. Before Rorik could press his advantage, a new presence, heavy and ancient, settled near Elin. Old man Kail, the pack elder, his silver hair a halo around his weathered face, stepped between Elin and Rorik. His gaze, usually kind, now held a stern, unwavering power. "Rorik," Sten rumbled, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of generations. "There is a time and a place for all challenges, and this is neither. Respect the gathering." Rorik hesitated, caught off guard by the elder's intervention. Kyle, though no longer a warrior, commanded immense respect. With a frustrated growl, Rorik backed down, his eyes still lingering on Elin with a possessive, calculating gleam. "As you say, Elder," he muttered, retreating to his table. But the message had been sent. Elin was vulnerable. Elin offered Sten a silent nod of gratitude, her throat too tight for words. The Elder's intervention was a temporary reprieve, not a solution. It only underscored her precarious position. The truth, stark and brutal, settled upon her. She was alone, utterly, irrevocably alone. The Alpha King, her mate, had allowed her to be publicly challenged and humiliated. The mate bond, that supposed unbreakable tether, had become a prison of silent agony. She couldn't stay. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. To remain was to invite further degradation, to become a symbol of Jonas's indifference and Samira's quiet victory. She would be a constant reminder of what was lost, an unwelcome ghost haunting the halls of her own betrayal. The pack, ever observant, would sense her weakness, her despair, and she would be picked apart, piece by agonizing piece. Her wolf, roused from its stupor, began to stir with a new kind of urgency, not to fight for a lost cause, but to flee, to survive. With a determination born of desperation, Elin quietly slipped from her seat. No one noticed at first, lost in the renewed hum of conversation and the clinking of goblets. She moved towards the grand archway leading out of the hall, her movements fluid, practiced, a phantom among the living. The cold night air, when it hit her, was a shock, a welcome slap to her senses after the suffocating heat of the hall. The crisp scent of pine, damp earth, and distant wood smoke filled her lungs, clearing the haze of humiliation. She walked purposefully, not running, not showing panic, but heading towards the less frequented paths leading to the forest edge. Her chambers, their chambers, felt like a cage she could no longer bear. She needed the wild, the raw embrace of nature to think, to breathe, to feel her wolf fully again. She needed to sever this connection, this agonizing ghost bond, even if it meant tearing a part of her soul away. As she entered the shadowed tree line, the familiar embrace of the ancient forest closed around her. The air grew colder, the sounds of the pack hall fading into a distant murmur. Moonlight, filtered through the thick canopy of leaves, dappled the forest floor in shifting patterns of silver and shadow. Here, in the wild, her wolf felt a little stronger, a little less stifled. She could feel the earth beneath her feet, the ancient roots, the whisper of the wind through the branches. She walked deeper, guided by instinct, seeking a place of solitude, a place where she could finally mourn. Her thoughts were a chaotic swirl of anger, grief, and a strange, nascent sense of liberation. The years of quiet compromise, of accepting stability over passion, of telling herself that duty was love, unraveled before her eyes. She had given everything, only to be left with nothing. No mate, no heir, no position, no respect. Only the silent, aching void where her bond should have been. A rustle in the undergrowth ahead brought her up short. Her senses sharpened, her wolf's instincts kicking in. It wasn't the sound of an animal. It was too heavy, too deliberate. She scanned the shadows, her breath catching in her throat. She wasn't alone. Had Rorik followed her? Or was it some other opportunistic male, emboldened by her public fall from grace? Then, a voice, low and gruff, emerged from the darkness. "Elin, you should not be out here alone." It was Jonas. He stepped into a patch of moonlight, his tall frame outlined against the dark trees. His face was unreadable, etched with shadows. He wasn't in his formal attire. He had changed into hunting clothes, his movements silent, predatory. His presence sent a fresh wave of conflicting emotions through her. Relief, for a fleeting second, that he had finally come for her. And then a colder, deeper anger. He had allowed her public humiliation, ignored her distress, and now he appeared, not as a mate, but as a watchful alpha. "What do you want, Jonas?" she asked. Her voice strained, barely a whisper. The scent of him, once a comfort, now felt like a suffocating shroud. He smelled of power, of the pack, but also of a subtle, unfamiliar pheromone, Samira's. It clung to him, a faint, sweet whisper on the wind, a confirmation of the quiet betrayal. His eyes in the moonlight were like chips of dark ice. "You were missed." The pack expects the Luna to be present at the feast. His tone was devoid of warmth, of concern, of anything but flat, regal expectation. Elin felt a bitter laugh bubble up, quickly suppressed. The Luna was present, you chose not to see her. Her voice grew stronger, fueled by the fresh surge of indignation. You let them circle me, Jonas. You let them tear at my standing. You allowed Rorik to challenge me in front of everyone. He took a step closer, his expression hardening. I am Alpha King. I cannot be seen to interfere in every petty squabble. You are Luna. You must defend your own position. The words struck her like physical blows. Her throat tightened. My position? My position is a mockery, Jonas. You have made it so. You have given your ear, your trust, your vulnerability to another, and you expect me to stand there, smiling, accepting my slow, public execution? Her voice cracked on the last word, the pain too raw, too deep to contain. His jaw clenched. You speak of things you do not understand, Elin. My duty to the pack is paramount. Sometimes that means making difficult choices. And you have grown distant. You have grown cold. The accusation, so utterly unfair, so utterly his projection, twisted the knife in her heart. I grew cold, she whispered, her eyes burning. Or did you simply stop looking for the warmth? You stopped sharing, Jonas. You stopped trusting me. You built a wall, brick by brick, and then you found someone else to whisper your fears to? Someone who wouldn't ask you to be anything more than the strong alpha, someone who just listened. The words tumbled out, years of unspoken hurt finally given voice. He flinched, a subtle tightening around his eyes, a fleeting moment of vulnerability she hadn't seen in months, but it vanished quickly, replaced by a cold, regal mask. This is not the time, Elin, or the place. Return to the hall. Maintain your composure, for the sake of the pack. The request, so formal, so devoid of any personal plea, was the final, definitive severing. There was no us left, no shared history, no intimate connection, only duty and his cold, dismissive command. Her wolf, which had been whimpering, now let out a silent, wrenching howl of grief and rage within her. The ghost limb of their bond, which had merely rested, now felt like it was being ripped from her very essence. Elin shook her head, a slow, deliberate movement. No, she said, her voice surprisingly firm, clear. I will not. Jonas stared at her, his eyes narrowed, a flicker of genuine surprise finally gracing his features. Elin, do not defy me. I am not defying you, she said, taking a step back, further into the shadows of the forest. I am simply choosing to no longer be part of this charade. You have made your choice, Jonas, and now I must make mine. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken finality. The full moon, now high above the canopy, cast long, distorted shadows, making the forest seem alive with ancient, watchful spirits. She could feel the primal pull of the wild, the call of the untamed, a stark contrast to the stifling politics of the pack. She looked at him one last time, at the man she had loved, the alpha she had served, the mate who had silently, patiently replaced her. There was no recognition in his eyes, no flicker of the Jonas she had once known, only the Alpha King, cold and resolute. Where will you go? He demanded, a hint of steel in his voice, his alpha command barely suppressed. Wherever my wolf takes me, she replied, her voice gaining strength, a nascent defiance blooming in her soul. Away from here, away from this betrayal, away from the silence, she turned, not waiting for a response, and plunged deeper into the forest, leaving behind the only life she had ever known. She didn't look back. She couldn't. The sounds of the pack hall, the scent of him, faded behind her, replaced by the rustle of leaves, the hoot of an owl, and the growing, exhilarating surge of her own wolf, finally free, finally roaring. As she ran, a new, unfamiliar scent reached her on the wind, something wilder, deeper, more primal than anything she had ever encountered within her pack's territory. It was the scent of something ancient and powerful, a presence that made her wolf pause, a shiver running down her spine, a thrill that was both fear and a strange, undeniable allure. She didn't know what it was, but it promised a wilderness far more untamed than she had ever dared to imagine. The ancient forest swallowed Elin whole, its darkness a welcome cloak after the searing gaze of the pack. Each footfall on the damp earth was a beat of a drum, propelling her deeper into the unknown, away from the suffocating scent of betrayal that still clung to her memory. The bitter tang of Jonas's indifference, the sweet, insidious perfume of Samira's quiet triumph, all faded, slowly replaced by the raw, untamed symphony of the wild. Pine needles cushioned her steps, the scent sharp and cleansing. The air was colder here, carrying the primal musk of deer, the musky dampness of moss-covered rocks, and something else, a scent that had pricked her senses even within the confines of the great hall. It was deep, ancient, like old stone and raw power, laced with the metallic tang of something untamed, dangerous, and utterly compelling. Her wolf, finally unbound from the suffocating constraints of the pack, surged within her, a thrilling, terrifying roar that vibrated through her bones. It was a roar of grief, yes, but also of fierce, nascent freedom. She ran, not with panic, but with a desperate, primal need to put distance between herself and the ruins of her life. Her human form was swift, agile, but her wolf yearned to burst forth, to shed the skin of humiliation and run on four paws, guided purely by instinct. The moonlight, a silver sheen through the dense canopy, painted the forest floor in shifting patterns, turning familiar trees into ghostly sentinels. She had known this forest all her life, but never like this, as an exile, a lone wolf with no pack mark, no alpha's protection. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, sent a jolt of adrenaline through her. Her senses, heightened by fear and liberation, picked up on every detail. The distant hoot of an owl, the scamper of a night creature, the low gurgle of a hidden stream. Her heart ached with a profound, desolate grief for what she had lost. Years of loyalty, of unwavering support, of love that had settled into a comfortable, dependable rhythm. She had believed in their stability, in the quiet strength of their shared history. But stability, she now realized, had been a pontificate, and history a lie. Jonas hadn't seen her for a long time, hadn't truly known her. He had seen a Luna, a duty, a vessel, but not the woman beneath, the wolf within. And in her quiet struggle to be everything he needed, she had lost herself. Her barrenness, once a silent sorrow, now felt like a brand, a permanent mark of her failure as a Luna, as a mate. As she moved deeper, the pervasive, unique scent grew stronger. It wasn't just a powerful wolf. It was something else entirely, something older. The whispers from the pack hall, the hushed tales told around late-night fires, resurfaced in her mind. Tales of the barren lands, the territory beyond their eastern borders, a place where no pack dared to tread. It was said to be cursed, haunted by the ghost of a lost alpha, a beast of untamed fury, scarred by tragedy, exiled even from his own kind. A wolf so dangerous, so powerful, that even the Alpha King Jonas Kett avoided his domain. Rune, the name, a low growl in the pack's collective memory, echoed in her mind. A shiver, both of dread and an almost forbidden excitement, traced its way down her spine. The scent was undeniably masculine, undeniably alpha, but it carried an edge of wildness, of raw, untamed power that was unlike Jonas's cultivated authority. It was a scent that promised danger, but also a strange, potent allure that resonated with the newly awakened, defiant part of her wolf. It was the scent of a primal force, a creature that lived by its own rules, outside the suffocating strictures of pack law. Suddenly, the forest floor gave way beneath her. A hidden crevice, overgrown with moss and shadowed by dense ferns, swallowed her foot. She stumbled, a cry escaping her lips, and twisted her ankle. A sharp, searing pain shot up her leg, forcing her to the ground. Her breath hitched. She tried to push herself up, but her ankle screamed in protest. Her wolf whimpered, frustrated, trapped in this vulnerable human form. She was injured, alone, and deep in territory rumored to be haunted by a creature of legend. Panic, cold and sharp, threatened to overwhelm her. She was not a warrior. She was a Luna, skilled in diplomacy and pack management, not wilderness survival with a twisted ankle. The wild, which had offered fleeting freedom, now showed its teeth. She was a broken Omega, without a pack, without an alpha, bleeding in the barren lands, a prime target for any predator. Then the air shifted. The ancient scent intensified, pressing down on her, not just from the wind, but from a tangible presence. A shadow detached itself from the deeper darkness of the trees. It was immense, larger than any wolf she had ever seen. Even in the gloom, she could make out the sheer bulk of it, the raw power radiating from its form. Her wolf, despite her pain, recognized the raw, undisputed alpha aura. It was terrifying, majestic, and utterly male. He moved with an unnerving silence, a predator in his natural habitat. His fur was the color of midnight, blending seamlessly with the shadows, until he stepped into a sliver of moonlight. Then she saw him, not in full wolf form, but in a partial shift, his human outline blurred by a thick coat of dark fur, his hands elongated claws, his face a feral mask of sharp angles and glowing eyes. And the scars. They crisscrossed his face, his neck, his powerful chest, some ancient, some fresh, telling tales of countless battles, of a life lived on the edge of survival. One particularly vicious scar tore through his left eye, leaving it a milky, sightless orb that contrasted eerily with his other, intensely intelligent, burning gold eye. He stopped a few feet from her, a dark, imposing silhouette. The air crackled with the primal tension, thick with the scent of pine, earth, and his own unique, potent musk. A scent that spoke of deep forests, ancient bloodlines, and something akin to sorrow. He didn't growl, didn't make a sound, but his presence was a deafening roar. Elin, despite her fear, found herself mesmerized. This was Rune, the rumored exiled alpha, the scarred sentinel of the wild. He was everything the legends claimed, and more. "Who are you?" His voice was a low rumble, like stones shifting in the earth, raw and untamed. It was unlike Jonas's refined baritone, carrying a weight of primal authority that resonated deep in Elin's own wolf. It was a voice that commanded obedience, not through position, but through sheer, inherent power. Elin struggled to sit up, ignoring the throbbing pain in her ankle. She felt a strange urge to bare her neck, a submissive instinct she hadn't felt in years, not even for Jonas, but her defiant wolf fought back, refusing to be cowed. "My name is Elin," she managed, her voice hoarse but steady. I was Luna of the Ket Pack. His good eye narrowed, burning gold in the moonlight, studying her with an unnerving intensity. He didn't react to her title or her pack name. It meant nothing to him. He was beyond such trivialities. "Luna," he echoed, the word tasting strange and foreign on his tongue, almost mocking. "Far from your moonlit hall, little wolf. What brings a Luna to the barren lands, injured and alone?" There was no pity in his voice, only a detached, predatory curiosity. Elin felt a flush of shame, quickly replaced by a surge of defiance. "I left," she stated, her chin lifting. "My alpha, he no longer needed me. I was replaced." She didn't elaborate, didn't offer a plea for sympathy. She simply stated the truth, stark and brutal. Rune let out a low, guttural sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a growl, but something in between. "Replaced," he repeated, his single golden eye glinting with a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher. Recognition, empathy, or perhaps simply the cold assessment of a predator. A common tale in the world of men, even those who claim the wolf. He took another slow step towards her, his scent overwhelming, intoxicating, dangerous. She could feel the pull, a primal thrumming deep within her, a response from her own long-dormant wolf. It was not the silent, aching void she felt for Jonas. This was different. This was a spark, a dangerous, thrilling current that ran through her veins, both terrifying and undeniably potent. Her body, her very essence, was reacting to him, to his raw power, to the sheer force of his presence. It was the awakening of something she thought had died, a primal resonance with a true, untamed alpha. "You are in my territory," he stated, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, his partial shift revealing more of the wolf beneath. Sharper teeth, longer claws. He bent, his face close to hers, his breath a warm, musky current against her skin. His golden eye searched hers, delving deep, seeing past the Luna, past the injured woman, straight into the heart of her wolf. "And my territory is not kind to outsiders." especially not to those cast out by their own kind. Elin's heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the electrifying proximity, the sheer intensity of his gaze. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the immense power contained within his scarred form. Her wolf, despite the danger, felt a strange, impossible draw, a yearning for the undeniable strength he exuded. It was the antithesis of Jonas's quiet betrayal. This alpha was raw, honest, and dangerous. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Rune straightened slowly, his gaze still locked with hers. He reached out a hand, his fingers long and strong, tipped with dark claws. He didn't touch her, but hovered inches from her twisted ankle, his warmth radiating, a strange electric current in the cold night air. The air thickened with unspoken possibilities, with primal tension. "The barren lands," he rumbled, his voice a promise and a threat. "Demand a price for passage." And for refuge. His golden eye, dark and ancient, held hers captive, a silent, powerful question hanging between them. The forest held its breath, waiting. Elin felt her wolf stir, a new, fierce light in its eyes. Was this salvation, or merely another, deeper form of captivity? The answer felt both terrifying and inevitable, a choice she would have to make in the heart of this wild, untamed land. His gaze flickered to her neck, where a mate mark, faint and fading, was barely visible, then back to her eyes, holding a question that chilled her to the bone. "What are you truly running from, little Luna? And what are you truly seeking?" The question hung in the cold night air, heavy with unspoken weight. "What are you truly running from, little Luna? And what are you truly seeking?" Elin's twisted ankle throbbed, a physical manifestation of the raw vulnerability she felt. Rune, the alpha of the barren lands, stood before her, a towering, scarred silhouette against the moon-dappled forest, his single golden eye burning with an intensity that saw through her carefully constructed defenses. She could feel her wolf, a vibrant, restless presence now, responding to his sheer power, a terrifying surge of instinct battling with the deep-seated fear. "I am running from a silence," Elin finally managed, her voice a raw whisper, a silence that grew between me and my mate until it became a chasm. A silence that swallowed my worth, my voice, my very existence. She inhaled sharply, the sharp scent of his musk filling her lungs, intoxicating and dangerous. "I am running from a betrayal that wasn't sudden or dramatic, but patient and deep, fed by conversations I was no longer part of." She paused, the full force of her humiliation washing over her. "And I am seeking, I don't know, a place where my wolf can breathe, a place where I am not simply defined by what I lack." The last words, about her barrenness, were choked, a primal shame that still clung to her like a shroud. Rune didn't flinch, didn't offer pity. His golden eye simply held hers, unwavering, as if he understood a language beyond words. He crouched, his movements fluid, silent like a shadow falling. His massive form loomed over her, radiating a contained power that made her every nerve hum. The air around him shimmered with it, a tangible force. He reached out, his clawed fingers, surprisingly deft, gently circling her injured ankle. His touch, though light, sent a jolt through her, a startling current of heat that had nothing to do with pain and everything to do with a long-dormant primal response. Her wolf stirred, a low growl rumbling deep in her chest, a mixture of alarm and a strange, undeniable longing. "You speak of silence," Rune rumbled, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that vibrated through the ground. "But the forest never truly silences, it merely shifts its voice. And the heart of a wolf, it always speaks its truth, if one is brave enough to listen." His gaze flickered to the faint, almost invisible mate mark on her neck, then back to her eyes, a silent question passing between them. "Your mate mark, it is faded. A ghost, but your wolf is roaring, little Luna, I hear it." Elin shivered, caught between fear and a profound sense of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. Jonas had never looked at her with such raw, penetrating intensity. He had looked at her as his Luna, his duty, his history. Rune looked at her as a wolf, a creature of instinct and pain and burgeoning strength. He found another ear, she confessed, the words tumbling out, laced with a pain that was still fresh. Someone who listened without challenge, without burden. I gave him stability, loyalty, duty. I gave him everything, and he found comfort in someone else's quiet understanding. And he allowed me to be publicly shamed tonight, allowed them to circle me to remind me that I am barren. The word was a bitter taste on her tongue. A muscle in Rune's jaw clenched. He didn't speak, but a low, dangerous growl vibrated deep in his chest, a sound of primal understanding, perhaps even ancient rage. He removed his hand from her ankle, and the warmth, the electric current vanished, leaving her surprisingly bereft. He straightened, turning his scarred profile to the moon. Barrenness is not always a curse, Elin. Sometimes it is a choice, or a burden carried by those who walk a path apart. His voice was distant now, laced with a profound, almost ancient sorrow. He seemed to speak from a place of deep personal knowledge, of burdens he himself carried. He turned back to her, his golden eye piercing. You cannot stay here, injured, alone. My lands are unforgiving. Not all who wander here are as discerning as I. There was a hint of dry, dark humor in his tone, but the underlying threat was clear. Come, I will tend to your wound. Then we will see. He didn't offer her a choice, but a command, an alpha's directive. And yet there was a strange, unsettling comfort in it, a stark contrast to Jonas's indifferent absence. Elin hesitated for only a moment. To refuse would be foolish. To accept felt like stepping into an even deeper unknown, into the lair of a creature of legend. But her wolf, responding to the undeniable authority in his voice, to the raw power of his presence, felt drawn to him, a moth to a dangerous flame. I cannot walk, she admitted, her voice small. Rune grunted, a sound of acknowledgement. He knelt fully, his strong arm reaching out. Shift, he commanded, his golden eye urging her. It will ease the pain, allow me to carry you. Elin hesitated. Shifting in front of a stranger, especially an alpha of Rune's caliber, was an act of profound vulnerability. It exposed her wolf, her true self, to his scrutiny, but her human form was useless, and her pain was intensifying. With a deep, shuddering breath, she closed her eyes, focusing on the primal shift, the familiar, agonizing stretch of bones, the tearing of skin as fur sprouted, the snap and crackle as her spine elongated. Her limbs transformed. A low groan escaped her as her injured ankle protested. But then the pain muted, dulled by the wolf's natural resilience. She opened her eyes, now golden and slitted, seeing the world in shades of night, her senses sharper. She was smaller than Rune, her fur a rich dark brown, her form sleek and agile, though currently hampered by her limp. She looked up at him, her wolf's gaze meeting his, a profound, wordless communication passing between them. Rune regarded her transformed state with an unreadable expression, a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher in his good eye. He didn't comment on her size, her color, or her injury. He simply scooped her up, his powerful arms supporting her weight effortlessly. She was surprisingly light in his grasp, cradled against his fur-covered chest. The scent of him, now closer, was overwhelming. Ancient forest, raw meat, damp earth, and that subtle, intoxicating undertone of something uniquely him, a deep, primal musk that resonated with her very core. It was a scent of danger, yes, but also of fierce protection, of untamed wildness that called to the deepest parts of her own nature. He moved through the forest with practiced ease, his gait smooth and silent, despite her weight. The darkness was no hindrance to him. Elin, tucked against his chest, felt the steady thrum of his heartbeat, strong and unwavering. It was a rhythm that spoke of endurance, of resilience, of a strength forged in isolation and hardship. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt safe, paradoxically, in the arms of the most dangerous alpha she had ever encountered. The thought sent a jolt of alarm through her, a warning from her rational mind. This was a monster, a legend, an exile. Yet her wolf felt a burgeoning sense of rightness, a pull towards this untamed power. They traveled for what felt like an hour, deeper into the barren lands. The forest grew denser, Wilder, the trees older, their branches gnarled and twisted, draped with moss. The air became even colder, carrying the faint metallic scent of something ancient and powerful, a magic that steeped these woods. Finally, he reached a clearing, hidden behind a curtain of weeping willows. Before them, nestled into the side of a rocky outcrop, was a cave entrance shrouded in thick vines. It was not a grand dwelling, but a primal, natural shelter, its entrance scarred by the passage of time and weathering. Rune carried her inside. The cave was surprisingly dry, lit by a small, flickering fire in a central pit. The air was warm, smelling faintly of wood smoke, damp earth, and his own distinct scent. Skins were strewn on the floor, providing warmth and comfort. It was a stark, solitary existence, yet it held a certain raw beauty, a quiet strength. He gently set her down on a pile of furs near the fire, his movements surprisingly tender. He then knelt beside her, his partial shift receding slightly, though his eyes remained golden, his face still etched with the scars. He examined her ankle with an expert touch, his fingers firm but gentle. Elin winced, but his presence, his focused attention, was a strange balm. He murmured something in a low, guttural tongue, a language she didn't understand, but which resonated with a deep, ancient part of her soul. Then he rose and moved to a small collection of dried herbs and roots near the cave wall. He crushed several leaves between his fingers, mixing them with a thick, earthy paste, his movements methodical, practiced. The scent of medicinal herbs, pungent and clean, filled the air, mingling with the wood smoke. Elin watched him, mesmerized. This powerful, fearsome alpha, the scarred sentinel of the barren lands, was tending to her, a discarded Luna, an injured Omega. The irony was sharp, the contrast with Jonas's cold indifference stark. He returned, the poultice in his hand. "This will sting," he warned, his voice still that low rumble, "but it will aid the healing." He applied the cool, fragrant paste to her swollen ankle, his touch careful, his concentration absolute. The herbs immediately began to work, a cool, tingling sensation spreading through her inflamed flesh. He then wrapped her ankle tightly with strips of soft leather, securing it with practiced efficiency. His hands, though powerful, were gentle, his touch conveying a silent, unexpected care. When he was finished, he sat back on his haunches, his golden eye meeting hers. "Rest," he commanded, his voice softer now. "The Ket pack is far from here. You are safe for now." Elin looked at him, at his scarred face, his powerful frame, the ancient wisdom in his one good eye. This was not the Alpha she had known, the one who ruled with policy and tradition. This was a primal force, a creature of the wild, scarred by a past she could only guess at. He was dangerous, yes, but there was an undeniable honesty about him, a raw authenticity that felt like a revelation after the subtle deceptions of her former life. Her wolf, fully awake now, pulsed with a fierce, almost desperate attraction. It was a bond awakening, not one based on convenience or duty, but on a primal recognition, a deep, resonant hum that spoke of ancient connections and shared wounds. This was a pull of untamed power, of a destiny she never knew existed. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, the human part of her still questioning, still wary. "Why help me?" Rune's gaze deepened, a flicker of something unreadable in his golden eye. He reached out again, his hand stopping just short of her face, his fingers twitching as if he fought an internal battle. His scent intensified, a powerful surge of raw emotion. "Because," he rumbled, his voice rough, "I know what it means to be cast out, to be forgotten, to walk alone with a ghost for a mate. And sometimes the barren lands yield something unexpected, something worth protecting." His gaze dropped to her fading mate mark, then back to her eyes, holding hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "But know this, Elin, my protection comes with a price. This is my territory, and you are under my claim, little Luna. For as long as you remain here, you belong to the wild, and to me." The possessive declaration, raw and undeniable, hung in the air, a thrilling threat and a terrifying promise, sealing her fate in the heart of the ancient scarred wilderness. Rune's declaration hung in the air of the cave, raw and undeniable. "For as long as you remain here, you belong to the wild, And to me, it was not a question, but a statement of inherent power, a claim that resonated deep in Elend's core. Her human mind reeled, a jumble of alarm and defiance, but her wolf, now fully present, pulsed with a fierce, almost desperate acknowledgement. This was the voice of a true alpha, a primal force that demanded a response from her own untamed nature. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows across Rune's scarred face, making his golden eye gleam with an ancient, possessive light. Elend, still in her wolf form, watched him, her golden eyes mirroring his. Fear warred with a strange, exhilarating sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years, not even in Jonas's territory. With Jonas, she had been Luna by title, but by essence, she had slowly become an extension of his will, her own wolf muted. With Rune, there was no pretense, no subtle manipulation. His claim was direct, brutal, and utterly honest. Belong, she finally rasped, her wolf's voice a low rumble in her throat. I belonged to no one. I was cast out. I chose to leave. The defiance was automatic, a reflex against a lifetime of being controlled, first by her pack's expectations, then by Jonas's subtle neglect. Rune's lips, partially human, partially wolf, curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. It was a dark, knowing expression that sent a shiver down her spine. Freedom from one cage does not mean freedom from all bonds, little wolf. The wild demands allegiance, and this wild, it is mine. He watched her, allowing his words to sink in, testing her resolve. You seek a place where your wolf can breathe. Here it will, but in return, you will learn the ways of this land. You will learn to survive, not as a Luna, but as a creature of instinct. And you will learn to listen, to me. The terms were harsh, yet Elend felt a strange relief. There was no pretense of love, no expectation of polite conversation or political maneuvering, only raw survival and primal obedience. This was a truth she understood, a simplicity that felt cleansing after the intricate lies of her former life. Her injured ankle still throbbed, a constant reminder of her vulnerability. She was at his mercy, but perhaps in that surrender, there was a different kind of strength. Over the next few days, Elend experienced a solitude unlike any she had ever known. Rune's cave became her sanctuary, a sparse, primal dwelling that slowly began to feel like home. Her ankle, expertly bound by Rune, healed with surprising speed, aided by his potent herbal poultices. He would leave her during the day, melting into the dense forest, only to return at dusk, often with fresh kill, deer, rabbit, sometimes a fat wild boar. He would prepare the meat over the fire, his movements efficient and silent, his golden eye always watchful, always aware of her. Elend found herself observing him, fascinated by his quiet power. He spoke little, but his presence was a constant, resonant force. His scars, once terrifying, began to tell a story of survival, of a life lived fiercely and without compromise. She noticed the way his good eye missed nothing, the way his ears, more wolf than human, twitched at the slightest sound in the forest. He was a creature utterly attuned to his environment, a master of his domain. And despite his fearsome appearance, there was a deep, almost ancient weariness in his gaze, a profound sorrow that hinted at a past as brutal as his present. Her wolf, freed from the years of suppression, has thrived in his presence. It responded to his alpha command, not with resentment, but with an instinctive, respectful deference. It was a different kind of bond than the one she had with Jonas. This was not about shared history or duty, but about raw, undeniable power and a deep, resonant recognition of kindred spirits, exiles, both. One evening, as the fire crackled and the cave was filled with the rich scent of roasting meat, Rune returned with a large buck. He butchered it with practiced ease, his muscles rippling under his fur. Elend, still unable to fully shift due to her ankle, watched him from her bed of furs. The silence between them was not the suffocating emptiness she had known with Jonas, but a comfortable, companionable quiet, filled with the sounds of the fire and the subtle shifts of the forest outside. He offered her a generous portion of the venison, cooked to perfection, rich and savory. As she ate, her strength slowly returning, she dared to ask, "Why are you here, Rune? Why do you live alone, an alpha without a pack, in the barren lands?" He paused, his hand still on the carving knife, his golden eye fixed on the flickering flames. The air thickened, charged with a sudden, palpable tension. His scent changed, becoming sharper, laced with a familiar tang of old grief. "Some wounds," he rumbled, his voice low, "are too deep to heal amidst the pack. Some betrayals, they leave marks that poison the soul, not just the flesh." He finally looked at her, his gaze intense. "My mate. She was taken from me. Not by an enemy, but by treachery within my own pack. They blamed me, accused me of madness, of failing to protect her. They cast me out into this land, stripped of my title, my family, my purpose." Elin gasped, a wave of empathy washing over her. His story, though far more brutal, echoed her own. Betrayal from within, loss of mate, loss of standing. The understanding that passed between them in that moment was profound. An unspoken acknowledgement of shared pain. "I understand," she whispered, her own pain resurfacing. "My own barrenness, it was used against me. A reason to be replaced. A reason to be cast aside." Rune scoffed, a dark, bitter sound. "Barrenness is a lie they tell to control, to justify their greed for power. A true mate sees beyond the physical, little wolf. A true mate cares for the soul, not merely the vessel." He stood, walking to the mouth of the cave, his back to her, his powerful shoulders hunched. "They say I am cursed, that my touch brings only sorrow, that the barren lands reflect the emptiness of my soul." Elin watched him, her heart aching. The air around him was heavy with the weight of his past. He was not just a powerful alpha, but a broken one, carrying the scars of a loss far deeper than her own. And in that vulnerability, a new layer of connection formed, a fragile bridge built on shared sorrow. Later that night, as the fire died down to embers, Elin shifted back to her human form, finding comfort in the soft furs. Her ankle, though still tender, felt much improved. Rune, still partially shifted, his fur thick, lay on the other side of the fire, his back to her. The silence returned, but this time it was different. It was filled with the echoes of their shared confessions, with a fragile intimacy that had bloomed in the heart of the wild. She couldn't sleep. The image of Jonas, cold and distant, giving his attention to Samira, haunted her. The humiliation, the pain, the profound sense of erasure. But beneath it, a new feeling stirred. A nascent anger, a spark of self-preservation. She was more than her barrenness, more than a discarded Luna. She was a wolf, strong and resilient, and she had found a strange refuge with another broken alpha. She turned her head, her gaze drawn to Rune's powerful form in the dim light. She could feel his presence, a steady warmth across the cave. Her human self felt a sudden, overwhelming urge for comfort, for connection, for something to anchor her in this terrifying new reality. Slowly, carefully, she pushed herself up, wincing slightly as she put weight on her ankle. She moved across the cave, drawn by an invisible thread. She stopped beside him, her shadow falling over his form. He didn't stir, but she knew he was awake. He was always awake. "Rune?" she whispered, her voice soft, vulnerable. He let out a low growl, a warning, but he didn't move. I am not afraid," she said, though her heart hammered in her chest. She reached out, her hand trembling, and gently laid it on his fur-covered shoulder. His muscles tensed beneath her touch, rigid as stone. The warmth of his skin, the coarse texture of his fur, was a shock to her senses. His scent, powerful and intoxicating, enveloped her. He remained still for a long moment. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, he shifted. He turned his head, his golden eye opening, meeting hers in the dim light. The intensity of his gaze was breathtaking, stripping away all pretense, all artifice. He was raw, untamed, and utterly compelling. "What do you want, Elin?" His voice was a low, dangerous rumble, laced with a warning she understood. "I want to feel," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion, years of suppressed feelings spilling forth. "To feel something real, not the silence, not the emptiness. I want to know what it is to be a wolf, truly, fiercely again." Her hand, still on his shoulder, tightened slightly. "And I think you understand that." Rune studied her, his gaze delving deep, searching her soul. He saw the pain, the desperation, the nascent strength of her wolf. Slowly he reached out, his powerful clawed hand rising until his fingers, surprisingly gentle, cupped her cheek. His thumb stroked her skin, a feather-light touch that sent shivers through her entire body. The raw power of him, the sheer intensity of his presence, was overwhelming, exhilarating. To feel, he echoed, his voice barely a whisper, his golden eye burning into hers. You wish to feel, little Luna? Then feel this. He leaned in slowly, deliberately. His scent enveloped her completely, a potent mix of wildness, earth, and something undeniably primal that called to her deepest instincts. Her breath hitched, her wolf surged, a roaring tide within her, recognizing the undeniable truth of this moment. His lips, warm and rough, met hers. It was not a gentle kiss, not a tender caress. It was a primal claiming, a fierce, undeniable connection that ignited a fire deep within her, burning away years of cold neglect. The kiss deepened, a desperate, hungry exchange that spoke of shared pain and burgeoning desire. His hand cupped her jaw, his thumb stroking her cheek, while her other hand tightened on his shoulder, clinging to him as if he were her only anchor in a storm. This was not the polite affection of a Luna and her king. This was the untamed passion of two broken wolves finding solace, and perhaps a dangerous kind of salvation, in each other's wildness. Suddenly, a sharp, distant crack echoed through the forest, followed by a faint, metallic scent on the wind, not of blood, but of something cold and man-made, something alien to the ancient wilderness. Rune broke the kiss, his golden eye snapping open, instantly alert, his body tensing beneath her hand. His head tilted, listening, his face a mask of primal warning. The air in the cave grew thick with a new kind of tension, cold and ominous. "Hunters," he rumbled, his voice a low, dangerous growl, his gaze sweeping towards the cave entrance. "They've found my territory, and they are close." He looked back at Elin, his golden eye burning with a fierce, protective intensity, his touch still lingering on her face, a silent promise and a new, terrifying threat. "Our quiet time is over, little Luna. The world outside will not leave us in peace." The taste of his kiss still on her lips, Elin felt a thrill of fear, but also a surge of fierce, protective loyalty she hadn't known she possessed. She was no longer just running from her past. She was now fighting for a future she hadn't dared to imagine, a future tied to the scarred, exiled alpha in the heart of the wild. The sharp crack, unnervingly close, had shattered the fragile intimacy of the cave. Rune's body, still partially shifted, was a coiled spring of primal power, his muscles rigid beneath Elin's hand. His golden eye, seconds ago filled with a raw, demanding passion, was now a predatory gleam, scanning the shadows beyond the cave entrance. The faint metallic scent on the wind, cold and alien, grew stronger, the unmistakable tang of gun oil, human sweat, and a chilling intent that spoke of organized hunting, not random wandering. "Hunters," he had growled, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that vibrated through the very stones of the cave. "They've found my territory, and they are close." The taste of his kiss still lingered on Elin's lips, a phantom fire, warring with the sudden, icy grip of fear. Their quiet time, their desperate solace, was irrevocably over. Elin's wolf, which had just begun to unfurl its strength, now bristled with a mixture of terror and fierce protectiveness. She had fled one kind of danger, only to find herself plunged into another, far more primal. She was no longer just running from her past. She was now fighting for a future she hadn't dared to imagine, a future tied to the scarred, exiled alpha in the heart of the wild. Her injured ankle, though healing, still throbbed, a constant reminder of her physical limitations, but her spirit, newly awakened by Rune's raw power, felt strangely unyielding. Rune moved with a swiftness that belied his massive form. He was instantly on his feet, his partial shift deepening, his claws elongating, his fangs sharpening. He grabbed a massive, gnarled branch from the side of the cave, one he had always used to stoke the fire, and its weight seemed to shrink in his powerful grip, transforming into a formidable weapon. He didn't question, didn't hesitate. This was his territory, and he was its undisputed, ferocious guardian. Stay here, he commanded, his voice devoid of tenderness now, replaced by the guttural authority of an alpha preparing for battle. Deep within the shadows, do not make a sound. Do not move. His golden eye met hers, burning with an intensity that brooked no argument. There was a raw, undeniable promise of protection in that gaze, a silent vow that he would face this threat, no matter the cost. Elin, still in her human form, nodded, her throat tight. She wanted to shift, to stand beside him, to fight, but her ankle would only hinder him, make her a liability. The frustration was a bitter taste in her mouth. She was a Luna, a leader, yet here, in this raw wilderness, she was reduced to a fragile human, hiding while her alpha defended her. Yet a part of her understood. This was Rune's fight, his domain. He was a creature of the wild, and she, a refugee from a softer world. He melted into the darkness near the cave entrance, becoming one with the shadows, his presence almost imperceptible, save for the faint, musky scent of his anticipation. Elin could hear the subtle sounds of the forest now, magnified by her heightened senses, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and beneath it all, the increasingly distinct sounds of approaching humans. 2, perhaps 3. The soft crunch of boots on fallen leaves, the hushed murmur of voices, too low to discern words, but undeniably human. And that scent, metallic, synthetic, utterly foreign to the pristine wilderness. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of fear and analysis. Who were these hunters? Were they simply rogue poachers, or something more organized, more sinister? Why would they venture so deep into the barren lands, territory known to be cursed, feared even by other packs? Unless they weren't just hunting game. Unless they were hunting him. The thought sent a fresh wave of dread through her. Rune was an exiled alpha, a legend. Perhaps there were those who sought to finish what his old pack had started, to truly erase him. She pressed herself against the cold, damp cave wall, blending into the deeper shadows, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could feel the earth trembling faintly with the approaching footsteps. The air grew colder, heavy with a sense of impending violence. Her wolf whined, a low guttural sound, urging her to shift, to fight, to protect her alpha. Yes, her alpha. The realization solidified in her heart, fierce and undeniable. Jonas had been her mate by bond, by duty. Rune, in just a few short days, had become her alpha by instinct, by shared vulnerability, by a primal, undeniable connection that transcended words. The footsteps grew louder, closer. She heard a hushed voice, rough and low, then the distinct click of a safety being released from a weapon. These were not mere hunters. These were experienced, dangerous men. They knew what they were doing. Suddenly, a beam of light cut through the cave entrance, sweeping across the rough-hewn walls, briefly illuminating Rune's position before passing over him. He was a statue, utterly still, a master of stealth. The light then caught Elin, briefly, in its harsh glare. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. Her human eyes widened in terror. "There!" a voice hissed, followed by the clatter of movement. "Someone's in here, it's fresh." Before Elin could react, before the hunters could fully enter the cave, Rune exploded into action. He was a blur of dark fur and raw power, a primal roar tearing from his throat, shaking the very foundations of the cave. He launched himself at the lead hunter, the gnarled branch a terrifying extension of his rage. The hunter screamed, a short, sharp sound of pure terror, cut off abruptly by the sickening thud of wood connecting with flesh. Elin heard the crash of the hunter's body, the clatter of his weapon on the stone floor. She heard frantic shouts, the panicked scramble of the other 2 hunters. Another beam of light, more erratic this time, swung wildly, catching glimpses of Rune's immense shifting form as he engaged them. He was a whirlwind of claws and teeth, a creature of pure, untamed fury. He fought not with strategy, but with instinct, with the desperate, ancient rage of a wolf defending its territory, its home, its mate. She heard snarls, grunts, the tearing of fabric, and then a sharp, piercing whine that was undeniably human pain. The metallic scent of blood, hot and fresh, now filled the air, mingling with the gun oil and sweat. It was a brutal, visceral symphony of violence. Elin's wolf howled silently within her, a desperate plea to join the fray, to lend her strength to his. But she remained hidden, trembling, her human hands clenched into fists, powerless. Then, a sickening crack, not of wood, but of bone, followed by a choked gurgle. One hunter down. The sounds of struggle continued, fierce and relentless. Rune was a force of nature, a beast unleashed. He was not just fighting for his territory, he was fighting for her, for them. Another hunter cried out, a terrified yelp, and then, a desperate scramble as the last one tried to flee. Rune's roar followed him, echoing throughout the forest, a terrifying promise of retribution. The sounds faded, leaving only the heavy silence of the cave, broken by Rune's ragged breathing and the faint coppery tang of blood. Elin slowly, cautiously emerged from the shadows. The cave entrance was the scene of brutal aftermath. One hunter lay crumpled near the entrance, motionless, his neck at an unnatural angle. His weapon, a sleek, modern rifle, lay discarded beside him. Another lay further in, clutching his arm, his face pale with pain and terror, groaning faintly. The third was gone, fled into the night. Rune stood over the injured hunter, his chest heaving, his fur matted with sweat and a faint sheen of blood. Not his own, she realized with a gasp of relief. His partial shift was still prominent, his teeth bared, his golden eye burning with a feral intensity. He was a magnificent, terrifying vision of primal power. He looked at Elin, his gaze slowly softening, the raw fury receding, replaced by something deep and complex. "Are you harmed?" he rasped, his voice still rough but laced with concern. She shook her head, unable to speak, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. "No," she whispered, finally finding her voice. "But you—" He waved a dismissive hand, a faint smear of blood on his fur. "They will not return, not for a long time." He then turned his fierce gaze on the injured hunter, who whimpered, trying to scramble away. "Who sent you?" Rune demanded, his voice a low, dangerous growl that promised unimaginable pain if the man didn't comply. The hunter, clearly terrified, stammered, We were hired to track a rogue, a beast for the Ket Pack." Elin gasped, her blood running cold. The Ket Pack. Jonas. He had sent hunters after her, or after Rune, or both. The betrayal, already a gaping wound, twisted deeper, a fresh, agonizing cut. Jonas wasn't just replacing her. He was actively trying to eliminate any connection she might have forged, any new life she might have found. He wasn't content with her public shaming. He wanted her erased. Rune's body tensed, his golden eye narrowing. "Jonas Ket," he growled, the name a curse on his tongue. He had already known a personal betrayal from his own pack. Now this was an echo of that, a fresh wound from another alpha. He looked at Elin, a silent understanding passing between them. Jonas had not merely cast her out, he had marked her, and perhaps Rune, for death. The hunter, seeing the fury in Rune's eyes, babbled. He wants to clear the barren lands. Says it's a threat to his borders, and he wants the Luna returned. Or confirmation of her demise. You were supposed to bring her back, or dispose of her if she resisted." Elin felt a wave of nausea, her knees threatening to buckle. Jonas wanted her back, or dead. He wanted control, absolute and total. He wanted to tie off the loose ends of his betrayal, to ensure there was no lingering evidence of his cruel indifference. And he was willing to send hunters, potentially killers, into a dangerous, forbidden territory to achieve it. Rune's roar when it came was not just primal fury, but a sound of profound ancient rage, a protective bellow that shook the very foundations of the cave. He turned to the injured hunter, his form fully shifting now, a massive midnight-furred wolf, terrifying and magnificent. His single golden eye blazed with a terrifying light. He seized the hunter by the scruff of his neck, shaking him like a rag doll. "Tell Jonas Ket," Rune snarled, his wolf's voice deep and resonant, "that the barren lands are no longer unclaimed. Tell him the Luna is under my protection, and if he sends another soul into my territory, I will come for him, and I will show him what true savagery means." He threw the terrified hunter against the cave wall, who collapsed, unconscious. Rune then turned back to Elin, his powerful wolf form still radiating a fierce, protective aura. He nudged her gently with his nose, his golden eyes searching hers. The danger was not over. Jonas Kett was a powerful alpha king, and this was only the beginning of a conflict far greater than Elin had imagined. She looked at Rune, at his scarred, magnificent wolf, and felt a surge of loyalty so profound it almost buckled her knees. She was no longer just a discarded Luna. She was a wolf claimed by a true alpha, ready to fight for her place in this wild, dangerous world. As Rune's warm muzzle brushed her cheek, a silent promise of protection and defiance, she knew that she was irrevocably bound to him for better or worse, in a battle for their very survival against the Alpha King who had cast her aside. Their new bond, forged in shadow and fire, was now tested by the treachery of the past, and Elin knew with chilling certainty that this was far from over. The air in the cave still hummed with the echoes of violence, thick with the lingering scent of blood and fear. But a new resolve had settled over Elin. Jonas Kett, her former mate, the Alpha King she had served for years, wanted her dead or subjugated. The realization was a bitter pill, burning away the last vestiges of grief for their lost bond and replacing it with a cold, righteous fury. She was no longer just running, she was fighting, and she would fight for Rune, for herself, for the fragile, wild sanctuary they had found. Rune, his wolf form still magnificent and terrifying, stood over the unconscious hunter, his golden eye burning with a quiet, dangerous intensity. He nudged the man's limp form with his powerful nose, checking for signs of life. "He will live," he rumbled, his wolf's voice deep and resonant. "But he will remember this night, and he will carry my message back to Kett." Elin, her heart still pounding, slowly shifted back to her human form. Her ankle, though still painful, felt a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength. She walked over to the discarded rifle, her fingers tracing the cold metal. It was a weapon of destruction, alien to the ancient ways, but effective. She picked it up, feeling its weight, its cold purpose. She had never held such a thing, her role as Luna never requiring such implements. Now it felt like a symbol of her new reality. Rune watched her, his head tilted, his golden eye assessing. He didn't question her actions, didn't chastise her. He merely observed, a silent understanding passing between them. He saw the change in her, the flickering spark of a warrior. "He wants to clear your lands," Elin said, her voice low, "and ensure my demise. He seeks control. He fears what he cannot contain." She met Rune's gaze, her eyes blazing with a newfound fire. "He will send more, stronger. He will not rest until this territory, and all in it, bends to his will." Rune shifted back to his partial human form, his powerful frame still radiating primal strength, but with a more accessible presence. He secured the unconscious hunter, binding his hands and feet, dragging him deeper into the cave, away from the immediate entrance. "Let him wake. Let him carry his fear and my warning." He returned to the entrance, surveying the dark forest. Kett's arrogance knows no bounds. He sees this land as a weakness, a forgotten corner, ripe for conquest. "But it is not," Elin countered, stepping closer to him, her gaze scanning the ancient trees. "It is a fortress. It is a haven for those who defy him. And it is yours." Her hand reached out instinctively and rested on his fur-clad arm. The contact was electric, a surge of shared purpose and undeniable connection. "We must prepare, not just to defend, but to show him that this land is protected by a force he cannot comprehend." Rune looked at her, his golden eyes searching hers, a flicker of something profound passing between them. "You speak of war, Luna," he rumbled, his voice low, a hint of challenge in his tone. "I speak of survival," Elin corrected, her chin lifting defiantly, "and of reclamation. He took everything from me, my place, my honor, my belief in the bond. He will not take this. He will not take you." The words were a raw, honest confession, laying bare the depth of her burgeoning loyalty, her fierce protectiveness for the scarred alpha who had offered her refuge. A low growl rumbled in Rune's chest, but it was not one of anger. It was a sound of deep satisfaction, of a primal acknowledgement. He reached out, his powerful hand cupping her cheek, his thumb stroking her skin, a gesture of tenderness that melted her resolve. even amidst the threat of war. "My mate," he whispered, the words a rough caress, a powerful claim. "My Luna, you have found your voice, and your wolf, it roars." The intimacy of the moment, forged in the shadow of impending battle, was breathtaking. It was a connection that transcended the physical, a recognition of spirits aligned, of souls finally finding their true counterpart. With Jonas, she had been a silent echo. With Rune, she was a resonant chord, part of a powerful, dangerous symphony. Over the next few days, their cave became a hub of strategic planning and intense training. Rune, recognizing the fire in Elin, began to teach her the ways of his wild territory. He showed her how to move through the forest unseen, how to track prey, how to read the subtle signs of the wild. He pushed her, challenged her, but always with an undercurrent of fierce encouragement. "Your senses are keen," he observed one morning as she successfully tracked a squirrel through the dense undergrowth, her ankle now almost fully healed. "You have been suppressed too long, little wolf. Your instinct is strong." Elin, in her wolf form, felt a thrill of pride. She was learning, growing, shedding the skin of the polite, domesticated Luna. She was becoming a creature of the wild, her brown fur blending with the earth, her golden eyes sharp and alert. Rune, in his full wolf form, a magnificent creature of midnight fur and blazing golden eyes, would watch her, a silent, powerful mentor. He taught her how to harness her wolf's strength, how to communicate with primal growls and shifts of posture, a language far more honest than human words. Their conversations, though sparse, were filled with a profound understanding. Elin shared her knowledge of the Ket pack, their patrol routes, their strengths, their weaknesses, the internal politics. She spoke of Samira, the new Beta's daughter, and her quiet, insidious influence, her ability to sow discord. Rune, in turn, shared more of his past, the true nature of the treachery that had led to his exile. It wasn't just a simple power grab. It was a deeper, more insidious plot that had weakened his pack from within, orchestrated by envious rivals who sought to discredit him and his true mate. "They spread lies," he rumbled one night, his voice heavy with ancient pain as they sat by the fire, sharing a meal of smoked fish. "About my mate's lineage, about my judgment. They manipulated the elders, turned the pack against us. They claimed I was too wild, too untamed, unfit to lead." He looked at her, his golden eye intense. "They feared my power, Elin, just as Ket fears the untamed power of these lands, and perhaps the truth of your own wolf." Elin listened, her heart aching for the injustice he had suffered. She realized how similar their experiences were, both discarded, both betrayed by those they trusted, both defined by what others perceived as their flaws. But here, in the barren lands, those flaws became strengths. Her barrenness, once a source of shame, now seemed irrelevant. What mattered was her spirit, her strength, her bond with Rune. "What is Ket's greatest weakness?" Rune asked, pulling her back to the present threat. "Beyond his arrogance?" Elin thought for a moment, recalling years of observing Jonas, seeing past the Alpha King to the man beneath. "His need for control," she finally said, "and his fear of being seen as anything less than absolute. He values tradition, but he can be swayed by whispers, by perceived threats to his authority. And he relies heavily on his betas, on Samira, for counsel. He no longer trusts his own instincts, not fully." A plan began to form, a dangerous, audacious strategy that would not only defend their territory, but strike at the very heart of Jonas's authority. Rune nodded slowly, a dangerous glint in his golden eye. "Then we will give him a threat he cannot ignore. We will show him that the barren lands are not barren at all. They are alive and they are protected." Their connection deepened with each shared thought, each whispered strategy. The physical intimacy, ignited by that first raw kiss, became an unspoken language of touch and gaze, a constant undercurrent of passion and devotion. Elin felt a fierce, exhilarating sense of purpose she had never known with Jonas. This was more than love. It was a primal fusion of two souls, two wolves, bound by shared pain and a burning desire for justice. One cold, moonless night, as they completed their final preparations, Rune turned to Elin. He was in his full wolf form, magnificent and imposing, his fur shimmering like polished obsidian. Elin, standing beside him, was also in her wolf form, her dark brown coat sleek, her golden eyes blazing with a newfound ferocity. "The time has come," he rumbled, his wolf's voice vibrating through the silent forest. "We will not wait for Ket to send more hunters. We will meet them on our terms. We will show them the true power of the barren lands, and we will remind the Ket pack what it means to face a true alpha." Elin leaned into him, her fur brushing his, a silent affirmation. Her ghost bond to Jonas was truly severed now, replaced by a vibrant, roaring connection to Rune. She was his Luna, his mate, his warrior. Her barrenness no longer defined her. Her strength, her loyalty, her fierce spirit did. "What will we do?" she asked, her wolf's voice strong and clear. Rune looked at her, his golden eye filled with a fierce, possessive love and a dangerous glint of anticipation. "We will send a message, Elin, a message that will shake the Ket pack to its core. We will remind them of the legends they fear, and we will ensure that Jonas Ket knows that the Luna he discarded has found her true alpha, and that together we are a force to be reckoned with." He let out a low, guttural growl, a promise of retribution, and then, with a powerful surge of his massive body, he began to move, melting into the deeper shadows of the forest, Elin running silently at his side, her heart pounding with a thrilling mix of fear and exhilarating purpose. Their destination, the very borders of the Ket territory, where a new dawn would either bring their triumph or their ultimate demise. The battle for their future had begun. The moon, a luminous disk hanging low and heavy in the night sky, cast long spectral shadows across the ancient border stones marking the edge of Ket territory. The air was frigid, sharp with the scent of pine and anticipation. Elin stood beside Rune, her wolf form sleek and powerful, her dark brown fur bristling with a mixture of apprehension and unwavering resolve. Rune, a magnificent silhouette of midnight fur, radiated a primal calm that anchored her own trembling spirit. His golden eye, sharp and unyielding, scanned the familiar landscape of her past, now viewed through the lens of a fierce protective alpha. This was it, the culmination of her escape, of her pain, and of the dangerous, exhilarating journey into the heart of the wild. They had moved silently, a pair of shadows, until they reached the demarcation line. The Ket pack's patrols were predictable, their routes softened by years of complacent peace, a peace Jonas had ironically nurtured while betraying its very foundations. Elin knew their patterns, their blind spots, their complacent arrogance. Rune, the master of the untamed, would exploit them. A low growl rumbled in Rune's chest, a silent command for patience. They waited, hidden amongst a cluster of ancient oaks, their senses attuned to the faintest whisper of the wind, the softest crunch of leaves. Elin could smell them now, the Ket patrols, their scent a familiar mix of pack pheromones, fear, and a hint of the synthetic metallic tang of their human weapons. There were 3 of them, 2 beta-level warriors and a younger, more eager male. As the patrol drew closer, their hushed conversation carrying on the still air, Rune moved. He was a dark blur, a force of nature unleashed. Elin followed, a primal roar tearing from her own throat, a sound she hadn't known her wolf possessed. They struck with synchronized ferocity, not to kill, but to incapacitate, to send a message. The Ket wolves, caught off guard by the sheer speed and power of their assailants, were overwhelmed in moments. One whimpered, disoriented, another lay stunned, and the third, the eager young male, found himself pinned beneath Rune's massive paw, his neck exposed, his terror a palpable scent. Rune leaned in, his fangs inches from the young wolf's jugular. "Carry this message to your Alpha King," he snarled, his wolf voice resonating with ancient power. "The barren lands are no longer forgotten. The Luna he cast aside has found her true alpha. Tell him to meet us at dawn by the Whispering Falls, at the old border, alone, or we will bring the wrath of the wild to his very doorstep." He released the terrified wolf, who scrambled to his feet, whimpering, and fled into the darkness, his tail tucked low. Elin watched him go, a grim satisfaction settling in her chest. This was not the humiliation of the harvest gathering. This was a declaration of war, a reclamation of her stolen dignity. Her gaze met Rune's, and a silent current of understanding, of shared strength and purpose, passed between them. This was their bond, forged in shadow and fire, tempered by betrayal. They retreated to a vantage point overlooking the Whispering Falls, a place of historical significance for both packs, where ancient treaties had been signed and broken. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and fiery orange, Elin saw him, Jonas Kett. He arrived alone as commanded, but his posture was rigid, his face a mask of furious defiance. His eyes, usually cold, burned with a dangerous glint. And behind him, barely visible through the trees, Elin caught the faint scent of hidden wolves, a contingency he couldn't resist. His arrogance remained. Rune stepped out first, his powerful form outlined against the nascent light, a magnificent, imposing figure that commanded immediate respect and fear. His partial shift was evident, his golden eye blazing, his scars stark against his dark fur. Elin followed, taking her place beside him, her wolf form a testament to her newfound strength. She met Jonas's gaze, her own golden eyes unwavering. The man who had dismissed her, who had allowed her public shaming, who had sent hunters to kill her, now faced her as an equal and an adversary. Jonas's eyes widened, a flicker of shock, then fury, crossing his face as he recognized Elin. "Elin," he growled, his voice laced with disbelief. "You dare to stand with this beast, this rogue, this cursed exile?" He spat the words, his contempt a palpable wave. "He is no beast, Jonas," Elin retorted, her wolf voice strong and clear, resonating with a power that surprised even herself. "He is an alpha, a true alpha. And these are his lands, lands you sought to conquer and desecrate, and I am his Luna." Her words were a physical blow, a direct challenge to his authority, to his very perception of her. Rune stepped forward, his presence overwhelming. "You sent your hunters into my territory, Kett," he rumbled, his voice a low, dangerous thunder. "You sought to claim what is not yours, you sought to silence her, but the wild does not bend to your will, and my Luna, she will not be silenced." Jonas's jaw clenched. "She is my bait, my Luna, her place is with the Kett pack." He took a step forward, his own alpha aura flaring, a desperate attempt to assert dominance. "And you, rogue, will pay for taking what is mine." Elin let out a sharp, derisive bark. "Your mate? You discarded me, Jonas. You let the whispers take root. You allowed my barrenness to be used as a weapon, and you found comfort in the quiet manipulations of Samira. You allowed me to be publicly shamed, then sent men to dispose of me. You severed our bond long before I walked away." At the mention of Samira, Jonas flinched, his composure faltering. "Samira is merely a trusted counsel," he barked, but his eyes darted nervously towards the tree line where his hidden wolves were. "A trusted counsel who whispered poison in your ear," Elin countered, her voice ringing with conviction. "Who preyed on your insecurities, who fed your arrogance, and who sought to replace me not with loyalty, but with a calculated, manipulative charm. She saw your weakness, Jonas, and she exploited it, while I gave you my strength, my truth, my unwavering loyalty." A low growl of agreement rumbled from Rune. He knew the insidious nature of such betrayals. Suddenly, Samira herself emerged from the tree line, followed by the two beta wolves Jonas had hidden. Her face was pale, but her eyes held a defiant glint. "He speaks the truth, Alpha King," she cried, her voice surprisingly sharp. "She was weak, barren, unfit to lead. I merely offered the strength you needed, the understanding she no longer possessed." The revelation, now public, hung heavy in the air. Jonas stared at Samira, a dawning horror in his eyes. He saw the cold calculation, the naked ambition, the self-serving manipulation that Elin had spoken of. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He had been used, his own insecurities leveraged against his true mate. The silence of their bond, he now understood, had been filled not by genuine connection, but by Samira's carefully crafted whispers. "You speak of what I lack," Elin growled, stepping forward, her wolf radiating pure, unadulterated power. "But you, Jonas, lack discernment. You lack true loyalty. You lack the courage to face your own weaknesses. You allowed yourself to be manipulated, and in doing so, you betrayed not just me, but the very essence of what it means to be an alpha. You are no longer worthy of the Kett pack." The betas behind Samira shifted nervously, their eyes darting between Elin, Rune, and their alpha king, whose rigid posture had begun to crumble. The scent of doubt and dissent wafted through the air. Jonas, stripped bare of his pretense, looked diminished, exposed. His eyes met Elend's, not with fury now, but with a profound, agonizing regret. He saw the fire in her, the strength, the powerful alpha beside her, and for the first time, he saw what he had truly lost. "This is not your land, Ket," Rune rumbled, his voice cutting through the tension. "And she is no longer your Luna. She is mine, and these lands are under my protection. You will respect our borders, you will cease your aggressions, and you will rebuild your pack, not on lies and manipulation, but on honesty and true strength, or you will face the consequences." Jonas looked at the three wolves before him. Elend, vibrant and powerful, a true Luna, Rune, the embodiment of untamed strength, an alpha without equal, and Samira, exposed and now a liability. He looked at the faces of his own betas, seeing the dawning realization, the flicker of doubt in their eyes. His authority, his carefully constructed world, had shattered. Slowly, painfully, Jonas Ket bowed his head, a gesture of defeat, of unwilling acceptance. "As you say, Alpha Rune," he whispered, his voice hoarse, broken. "The borders will be respected, and Elend, I release you from our bond, truly." His gaze, filled with a deep, sorrowful understanding, met Elend's one last time. "May you find the peace I could not give you." With a heavy heart, he turned and, with Samira now dismissed and disgraced, walked away, his remaining betas following, their heads low. The Ket pack was left to face its own reckoning, to heal the wounds of a leadership blinded by pride and manipulated by deceit. Elend watched him go, a profound sense of closure settling over her. The silence between them was truly broken now, replaced by the roar of her own freedom. She turned to Rune, shifting back to her human form, her ankle now completely healed. He did the same, his powerful, scarred form standing before her, a symbol of redemption and untamed love. "It is done," she whispered, a tear tracing a path down her cheek, but it was a tear of release, not sorrow. Rune reached out, his strong hand cupping her face, his thumb gently wiping away the tear. His golden eye, filled with the tenderness she never thought she'd see in him, searched hers. "And now," he murmured, his voice a low primal caress, "we begin anew, you and I, Elend, in the heart of our wild lands." They returned to their cave, to the sanctuary they had forged in shadow and fire. The barren lands, once a place of fear and exile, now felt like home, vibrant and alive. Elend's wolf, once muted and shamed, now soared within her, free and powerful, recognized and cherished by its true alpha. Her barrenness, once a curse, was now understood as a limitation imposed by an incompatible bond, a silent suffering that had choked her essence. With Rune, a deeper, more profound connection had been awakened. Months later, the cave was no longer just a solitary dwelling. It was vibrant, filled with a quiet hum of life. The barren lands, under Rune and Elend's fierce protection, had become a haven for other lost, discarded, or rebellious wolves seeking true freedom and a different kind of pack. They were a pack of exiles, of strong individuals, bound not by tradition or lineage, but by choice, by loyalty, and by the undeniable power of their Alpha and Luna. One crisp spring morning, Elend stood at the mouth of their cave, the scent of new growth filling the air, the sun warm on her face. Her hand instinctively rested on her abdomen, a gentle curve barely perceptible beneath her worn tunic. The news had been confirmed by an ancient healer from a distant isolated clan who had sought refuge in their lands. The barren Luna, whose bond with Jonas had been a silent, life-choking lie, was pregnant. Their bond, Rune's and hers, a true primal resonance, had awakened life within her. Rune came up behind her, wrapping his powerful arms around her, his chin resting on her shoulder. His scent of pine, earth, and fierce, protective love enveloped her. He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Our new beginning," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, his golden eye gazing out at their thriving, wild domain. Elend leaned back into his embrace, her heart overflowing with a peace and joy she had once thought impossible. The past, with its betrayals and humiliations, was a distant echo. Her ghost bond was truly severed, replaced by a vibrant, roaring connection that had not only brought her to life, but had created new life within her. She was not just a Luna, she was a mate, a mother-to-be, and a warrior queen of the wild, standing with her scarred, magnificent alpha, ready to forge a new future, a new legacy, in the heart of their untamed, beloved lands. The whispers of treachery had been silenced, replaced by the roar of their truth, a symphony of love, power, and enduring freedom that would echo through the barren lands for generations to come.